let's start with the All-Stars. Let's start with the Western Conference. Chaz, who was in that backcourt for the Western Conference? Who should be in the backcourt for the Western Conference?
Yeah, so this is one that I actually kind of went back and forth with. I think the obvious choice is Luka Doncic. I would be pretty surprised if you guys left him off yours, but he's definitely in one of mine. And then the other spot is where I had some trouble with. It was kind of up to Steph Curry, Ja Morant, and then somebody like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I think has been one of the maybe 10 to 15 best players in the whole league. And isn't somebody that would normally be in consideration for that spot, but because he's played so well, I feel like you almost have to have him at least in the conversation. So I settled on Steph Curry just because I feel like that's the most realistic. He's a guy that's been there forever. He's probably going to have the votes to do so. But I really think that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at least deserves a shout out. But I did end up going with Steph Curry and Luka Doncic. What about you guys?
I'll let you go first, Danny, because I'm gonna talk.
Okay. I definitely have Steph in the backcourt. I think what is known don't need to be explained. I think he's earned the nod until he's no longer in his physical prime to be an all-star starter.
Even with the injury?
Even with the injury.
Okay.
We've seen in recent all-star selections and games that there's been players that particularly haven't played like a lot of games. In instances like Kevin Durant last year, he didn't really play the games that he needed to play in order to be selected, but he was still made an all-star starter. And obviously he didn't play, he was captain. And then this year he potentially could be captain again, but this go around he met the threshold as far as games played. So I still think that vote, the leader should go to someone that's actually playing the game, who should pick that team. But that's for a different conversation that we could have later on. But I did go with Luka. I do believe he's having an MVP caliber season. Right now, I got him ranked as the third best player in the league. He's been putting up, what can I say? He's unstoppable offensively.
Yeah.
And we know what the All-Star game is about, threes and layups and trick shots, dunks. It's no defense being played. And I think he fits that game perfectly. So I will get a nod to Luka and Steph in the backcourt.
All right, fair enough. So from my perspective, I'm gonna go with
Let's mix it up.
I went back and forth on this one. Because from my perspective, I do have a tough time with players who have suffered significant injuries when it comes to awards like this. You need to be on the court and playing to, be given these awards. It's kind of always how I feel. Ultimately, though, I landed in the same spot as you guys with Luka and Steph. Luka was, a given. Yeah, Luka was a given. I don't even really think I need to explain that. I just think like Steph's been phenomenal this year. He's shooting the hell out of the ball. He's like right now he's averaging 40, 50, 90 on 30 points a game, with 7 rebounds and 7 assists. It's absurd for a 6'3" guy to be doing any of that. And if you look at his plus minus, it's crazy how much worse they are with him off the court. So yeah, Steph's my second guy in the backcourt in the West.
What was your hesitant about Steph because of him missing time? Was that where you initially was going at first?
It was him missing time, and then it's also like Devin Booker and SGA has been great.
What about Ja?
Ja has also been great. It's tough, especially in the West. There's a lot of great guards. You didn't mention Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard's been, phenomenal. Although Damian Lillard has kind of the same issue as Steph with the playing time due to injury. But I think from my perspective, it's Steph has been so good that it doesn't matter that he's missed time.
Mm-hmm. Chaz, what about the front court? Now, before you answer that, I've always had this pet peeve, like it's something that I really hate about the NBA, is that I think, and this is not just in relates to the All-Star game, but also is in relates to when they're picking their first team all NBA teams. I think it should be positionless. I don't think we need, a center, two front court, and then we need 2 point guards. I think the best 5 players, no matter the position, should be on first team. I don't care if that's 3 guards. I don't care if it's 4 guards. I don't care if it's 5 centers. I don't care. I think the best 5 players should be all NBA. What is your guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll keep it brief, but I would agree with you about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree too. I think it probably matters a little bit more for all NBA than it does for the All-Star game, just because I think all NBA really kind of cements people's legacy. And them kind of forcing that center in there has kind of altered history the last few years. For the All-Star game, not as much, I would say. And I do like that they have the 3 front court and 2 guards, so you don't necessarily have to have a center as long as you have 3 front court. So I mean, I think it's a little bit better. But I definitely agree with you guys. I feel like the way that the league has been going, the sport in general has been going for the last 10 plus years. Why not make it positionless at this point?
Yeah. Your front court players?
Yeah, so my front,
What's-
I really had. I mean, there's a lot of guys that were in the conversation, even guys like Laurie Markkinen, who, I mean, I don't know if anybody could have seen that coming. But I really had 4 guys that I had to get 3 spots from. Those guys were LeBron, Zion, Nikola Jokic, and Anthony Davis. I ended up leaving Anthony Davis out, partially because of the injury, but he was playing at such a high level that I really felt like he probably would have been in there if he never gotten hurt. But I am going to go with LeBron on one wing, Zion on the other, even though he hasn't played, as much as I think some people would like him to be a starter. I think he deserves it. And then, the big man in the middle, the 2-time MVP, Nikola Jokic. I feel like he's the obvious pick in the middle.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, I came down to the same 4 that you did, Chaz, for the front court. And I was right there with you in that I really wanted to put Anthony Davis down as an all-star starter.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's just going to come down to the injury. So I landed exactly where you landed, Chaz, with Zion, LeBron, and Nikola Jokic. I will say, had Anthony Davis played enough games, LeBron probably would have been the guy that I would have left off. I'll throw that out there. But very impressed with what we've gotten out of all 4 of those guys this season.
Yeah.
I had almost similar to you guys, the 4. LeBron, Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, but I also had a 5th option in there. You guys know who that was? You guys know who that was. You guys know who that was. Yes, you do.
I do.
Is it
All-Star
Andrew?
game starter Andrew Wiggins.
I was about to say
All-Star
Andrew
game
Wiggins.
starter
He's
Andrew
not in the
Wiggins.
conversation.
Get the fuck out
All-Star
of here.
game starter Andrew Wiggins.
Thank God we don't have to talk about him this year.
Yeah, that shit never. Anyway, that shit was ridiculous.
Whatever, he deserved it. He deserved it. He deserved to be there. And maybe it shouldn't have been a starter. He
Okay.
deserved to be on that
Not
team.
maybe.
I
He
agree
shouldn't
with
have
that.
been a
I
starter.
agree.
Whatever. You know he deserved to be on there. But I'm going to go with you guys. I'm going to go with Jokic. Look, Tunday's so he deserved to be there, Tunde, man. Come on. Anyways, I'm going to go with LeBron. I'm going to go with Jokic, and I'm also going to go with Zion. Has Zion played enough games?
Yeah.
Just enough,
Just enough? Okay.
in my opinion.
I'll take that. I think he deserves it. He's had a great year when he's been on the court. The Pelicans, I mean, I know Tunde said it, beginning of the season. I mean, that this team has potential to make some noise. I don't know how far they can go. But I definitely know they can make some noise in the Western Conference. It all depends on Zion's health. If he's right, if he's healthy, this team can potentially go all the way to the Western Conference Finals. I'm not going to say that they can win it, but they can get to that point. I think CJ, he adds some veteran leadership that they needed. BI, who is, to me, is unquestionably the best player. And that could be debatable, but I think I get the nod to BI.
Over Zion?
Over Zion, I would. It's very close to me, but I personally would take BI because I know BI is reliable. More than
talking about
Zion
the
is.
All-Star
More
game,
than
or-
Zion is. No, I'm saying in general. I kind of went off on a tangent a little bit.
Right.
But I'm slowly trying to bring myself back. But I would take BI over Zion when it comes to availability. Now, obviously, he's not the talent that Zion is. But I think that team could potentially make some noise if they're healthy. So I agree with. I think we all have unanimously the same five. For the starters. Now let's move into the reserves. Chaz, who are you giving the two front court players to in the Western Conference?
So there'd be how many bench players would there be then? 7?
Does it matter the
I
position?
don't think the position matters, right?
Okay. Who are your 7?
I can't remember how they do it. I'll
It's
just go
two backcourt and then
only
3
2,
reserves and then 2 wildcard spots.
and it doesn't matter
Two
position for the wild card.
two backcourt reserves, 3 front court reserves, 2 wildcard spots. That can be whatever you want.
Okay, I'm just gonna give you guys a couple of guards then, if that's cool, and then we can just maybe do that, and then we'll move into the front court bench players.
Cool.
Does that sound good? So I already mentioned SGA, who I thought would be in the conversation to be a starter, averaging 30.8, 5 and 5, which is pretty phenomenal on 50% shooting. Like I said, I feel like he's been one of the maybe 5 best point guards in the whole league to start this season. Even though the team is a few games below 500, I think he deserves to be on the team. Not a starter, not yet, over somebody like Steph, but I think he should be on the team, and I'm assuming he will be. I would also give Ja Morant in there. And then depending on, who's injured, who wants to play, I assume Damian Lillard and Devin Booker will get the offer. I don't know if they end up playing in the game, but I think those guys will be in the mix as well. And then one more that I'll just throw out there before you guys go is De'Aaron Fox, who I feel like has been pretty phenomenal this season. Last year I picked him to be an all-star. He wasn't great. This year I feel like he's on track to be. I don't know if he will end up being, because the backcourt in the West is so loaded. But I think De'Aaron Fox, who's averaging 24, 6 and 5, and has been one of the best fourth quarter scorers, I think he deserves to be in it as well.
What about those front court players? Did you name the front court players already?
No, you guys want to go for guards and then we'll circle back for front court?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
I'll go with my guards. I mean, I think I've already kind of told you guys who they are. But I went with Devin Booker and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. What we've seen from Devin Booker this year has been phenomenal. He kept the Phoenix Suns afloat through the behind the scenes soap opera, through Chris Paul being, out and having multi-game stretches being out. Ayton's been out for, period of time. Cam Johnson being hurt. Jay Crowder is holding out for some reason. Because I guess Jay Crowder is somebody who's good enough to hold out, and that means something in the NBA. It really doesn't. That shit, you guys have heard me say this in the last episode. That shit is crazy to me.
I said Jay who?
Anyway, I'm not gonna go on another Jay Crowder tangent. I have never particularly cared for that guy, mostly because he be out there trying to hurt people. I don't respect that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, Devin Booker has kept the Phoenix Suns afloat. At times, with it seeming like he's out there is really the only guy who has the ability to create off the dribble or put pressure on the rim, and in any real sense. I know, we all might have seen the game the other night against the Warriors, but like Damian Lee not doing all that. Yeah. and what he's done in the efficiency he's been able to maintain while being the only true advantage creator on that team is really special. Past that, I go with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I really enjoyed watching the Thunder play basketball this year. Just as an aside, but I think from my perspective, there's not really a ton of separation between SGA, John Morant, and somebody like Damian Lillard. I think where I go with Shai is that he's played the most games out of the three of them. It's 29 games played for Shai versus 25 for Ja versus 20 for Dame. That's honestly a lot of the separation. And then also, like, in watching a lot of the Thunder games, one of the things that you'll see and you'll notice is that Shai has been an absolute god at the end of games. And for my money, the performances in the quote unquote clutch are kind of part of the separating factor here.
Gotcha. I tend to agree with all the players you guys said. The only problem that I really have with is I just don't think that 20 games is enough to be considered an all-star. Especially if you're going into the all-star break, 42, 43 games in, 44, something like that, probably even more. I don't think playing half of those games should qualify you as being an all-star, especially because I don't think Dame is playing right now still. And who knows when he's going to get on the court again. I don't personally think he deserves that nod just by only playing 20 games. So I would not include Dame as an all-star.
I don't think either one of us put Dame in though, right? That's what we were both saying.
Well, you said reserves. Well, you said still on the all-star team.
Well, no, what I was saying is that it's two backcourt spots. The people that I was personally picking between that kind of named, because we're just talking about.
So you wasn't actually put him on the all-star team.
No, what I'm saying is I'm just talking about players who have played well enough to make a case for the
all-star. Okay. Do you think he deserves to be on the all-star team?
I mean, I'll reserve my answer on that for the wild card segment.
Okay. That's fine. Chaz, your front court players.
Wait, did you want to mention any more guards, or are you good?
Shai, I agree with. I agree with Ja. I agree with Book. The only one I tend to disagree with would be Dame.
Okay.
So, and that's strictly because I don't think he's played enough games.
Right.
Up until that point where the All-Star game will happen when they go on break. If he's still not playing, I don't think he deserves to be an all-star, only playing 20 games.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I will say he was playing at an all-star level before he got hurt. So
absolutely,
if he is able to get back and, maybe have 2 weeks or something before, who knows? But I'd probably agree with you that he'd be just on the outside. As for the front court, though, you guys ready to move on to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. I assume we're all going to have Anthony Davis in one of those spots since we had him, so close to being a starter. And then the next person, kind of shockingly, that I have to mention is Lauri Markkanen. I mean, to me, he's been the next best forward in the Western Conference this year, averaging like almost 25 points per game. Been one of the best forwards in the conference. I mean, he's had 40 plus multiple times. He's really carried Utah's offense at times this season, and he's been really explosive. He's been really consistent, which is something that we've never really seen from him. And this is not something that I would have had even in the conversation at the beginning of the year. And now I feel like he has to be an all-star. Do you guys agree with Lauri Markkanen being on the team?
I do. I'm going to defend Lauri Markkanen's honor real quick. So Lauri Markkanen was my second favorite player in the 2017 draft as a prospect, Lonzo Ball being number one. Does not mean I've had him as the second best player in that class, just my second favorite player to watch instead. Always been a really big fan of his game. And then people kind of got it mixed up with what he could or couldn't do because Jim Boylan was his head coach for, an extended period of time in Chicago. But that had never had anything to do with his skill set or his ability to put the ball on the floor or how good an athlete he is, which he's never gotten credit for. And now what you're seeing this year, it's a kind of a culmination of all the things that he does, where he's kind of in that Klay Thompson mold of being a guy who can, you know, dribble the ball, 11 times in the game, and you look up and he's got 45 points.
Yeah.
It's really impressive how efficient he's able to be with the touches that he has, and in a way that always works within the flow of an offense. It's really, really impressive stuff. And it's been great to watch them fully lean into how good he is without the ball in his hands. Larry's getting a front court spot in my Western Conference All-Star and my Western Conference front court reserves. Number 2 there in my front court reserves, this isn't really in order, but Anthony Davis also gets a spot for me. I mean, I think you all heard what I had to say about Anthony Davis before. He's playing absolutely phenomenal basketball. From my perspective, the injury just means he ends up being a reserve instead of a front court, instead of like a starter. But we got to reward what he was doing. He was, playing phenomenal shit, or playing at a phenomenal level.
Yeah. Then I feel like it starts to get a little more difficult, right?
Yeah, it definitely starts to get a little more difficult.
I have a hard time with this, because you take what Anthony Davis was doing at the beginning of the season and you're like, no doubt, he deserves to be an all-star. I believe what he was averaging, 12 rebounds. He was 27.5, almost 59% from the field. So obviously you would think, okay, he's definitely an all-star. I'm going to propose the same question. Has he played enough games? Like, when it comes to that point, will he have enough games under his belt in order to be considered an all-star? I think playing 20, 23, 24 games, I don't think that's enough to be an all-star. When your all-star game is halfway through the season, it marks, quote unquote, your midpoint, and you're 43, 44 games into the season. Like, I don't see how you make the case, other than what we've seen before at the beginning of the season. I don't see how you make the case that he can realistically be on that team only playing 23 games. Now, the numbers are the numbers. We saw what he did at the beginning of the season. Numbers are the numbers. But if he's still out and all of a sudden we get close to All-Star game and now he's back, I mean, do we reward that? Like, I'm not sure we do. I think there's players that, I'm not saying there's players that's playing better, right now, especially for the front court, but people that's been ready and available, he hasn't been available. So I'm kind of torn between that. I'm not sure. On one hand, I'm saying, of course, he's an all-star because of the numbers. On the other hand, I'm like, he hasn't played enough games.
I mean, I think from my perspective, it's really just a thing where you have to kind of compare them head to head to all of the players who are who have deserving cases for the award or whatever spot it is you're trying to give them or what have you. So a good example of this would be Joel Embiid's rookie year. He played 31 games, was one of the best centers in the league in a 31 or 41 game span. And Malcolm Brogdon was a solid rookie, a quality rookie, but there was just not a comparison between, and there was not really a comparison between the two of them as far as who was
the better player.
Yeah, it was who was the better player that year. It was just about like, do you feel cool giving Joel Embiid this award knowing that he missed like 50 or 60% of the season?
It's kind of like the Ja and the Zion when Ja won, I believe it was it Rookie of the Year? When he won Rookie of the Year over Zion, everyone knows Zion's a better player, but Zion didn't play.
Yeah, he played like 18 games.
Yeah, he didn't play. But if you want to know, if you're going based off talent, Zion, he should be Rookie of the Year, no matter if he played 18, 15, whatever the case may be. But you have to have there has to be some type of criteria that players have to meet in order to be an all-star.
Sure.
I agree
I
with that.
I agree with that too.
I will
Um,
go ahead, Tunde.
I was gonna say for what it's worth, yeah, Anthony Davis meets the threshold for me. I also think it depends on just like how well you play, and I think it's hard to argue. It's hard to argue he wasn't playing at an extremely high level,
It's
like
hard to argue the numbers.
top five level. You can't
Yeah.
really argue with that.
Yeah.
Um, I will say there are 3 front court spots, and I think I only gave 2 guys
Go
with
ahead.
Anthony Davis and Laurie Markkinen. So to be brief and to not take up this whole time, last spot is between the last spot here were between for me anyway, it's between Paul George and Domantas Sabonis. I'm gonna give the slightest edge to Paul George. Just really real hard call for me, but that's where I'm gonna go, just because of the injuries with Kawhi Leonard mean that Paul George has had to do everything, be the primary defensive stopper, be the primary offensive guy, be a facilitator, be a glue guy, be in between the gaps, and he's doing all of that and doing it at a really high level. And again, similar to Devin Booker, he is kind of what's keeping the Clippers afloat. But Sabonis has been awesome this year. I mean, the Kings have been impossible to stop offensively. He honestly might be the biggest reason why they are that way. Not just with his ability to score the ball or what he does in the post, but his passing and his ability to serve as a hub, as a passing hub, as an outlet, 2-man game with Kevin Huerter and De'Aaron Fox. He's doing all of that at a really high level. So he gets a shout out, but he's not going to get one of my initial front court spots. Chaz, I believe you had something to say there, so I want to be sure we let you talk here.
Yeah, I was gonna say about Anthony Davis, that I agree with you guys that there needs to be somewhat of a criteria. But I do feel like it's a little bit different than in individual award, where there's only one guy that can win it. Because with the All-Star, you can put Anthony Davis in it, and then even if he's not able to play, you can just sub him out. Pick a different reserve. Both players will get the All-Star nod. I feel like that's something that we see, 2, 3, 4 players every single season. I'm assuming that's going to happen this year as well. Could be AD, could be Dame, Devin Booker. There's a lot of guys. KD is obviously going to be one. There's a lot of guys that will deserve a spot and just won't be able to play for whatever reason. So I feel like AD will get that nod. But who knows if he's actually going to take the court that night.
Yeah. I'm actually going to go with Sabonis.
Nice.
And I'm actually going to put AD in there despite everything that I've said, because I think he deserves it. I'm just questioning when I would like to know what's the criteria for being an all-star.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that you don't deserve to be an all-star if you've played half of the games thus far.
Mhm.
And there's an 82 game season, and you've put in it up until that point, you're into what, 44 games, something like that. And you've played
I think we'll be past 50 by that point.
past 50 about it. If you've played you've missed 30 odd games. I don't think you deserve to be an all-star.
I agree with you.
I don't, but you can't argue with the numbers. But I don't think missing 30 games out of 50 that you should be an all-star. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You guys ready to move on to the opposite side of the court?
Yeah, so do we still need the 2 wild cards? How many is that for?
Oh, right. I
We do.
forgot there's yeah. Keep forgetting those guys.
So we're kind of doing this on the fly, but I think we pretty much have the same 10, right? We have Steph Curry,
Yes.
Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Zion Williamson, Nikola Jokic. And then for the reserves right now, I think we agreed on Ja, SGA,
Yep.
Paul George, Domantas Sabonis, and Anthony Davis. Is that
I
right?
didn't agree with Paul
You
George.
did not agree on Ja. I had Devin Booker there.
I did not
Okay,
agree
so
on
Devin
Paul
Booker.
George.
And then, so Danny, what other front court player would you have in the mix instead of Paul George? Because that's kind of someone who I feel like is on the bubble, but there's really nobody else that I feel comfortable putting in. I mean, coming into the year, it was like, Kawhi Leonard, Rudy Gobert, Brandon Ingram, Karl Anthony Towns. Like, those are all guys that you feel like would be in that mix. even if you want to put your guy Andrew Wiggins in that conversation, but none of those guys would be in the mix now. So it's almost hard not to go with somebody like Paul George.
Are we sure Andrew Wiggins won't be in the mix time the All-Star game come around?
Yes.
Not in my mix. Not in my
I
mix.
mean, he's the second best player on a championship team. Well, a champion team that won last year. They're not looking like a championship team right now.
Yeah,
This is the
he's
thing.
averaging 18 points a game. And how many games?
18.4. Yeah.
How many games has he played? Only 24. So I mean, even less than 18.
But there goes the games played again.
Yeah, that's an issue with a lot of people.
Yeah, so if he's continuing to play and we still have a little time before All-Star, a couple weeks, I mean, he can. I don't know if he's obviously on the list now, but I don't know if you're asking me between him and Paul George. I'm going to go with Andrew Wiggins right now, just because I think that he's going to have the ability to put up some points in the coming weeks. This Warriors schedule is getting a little lighter. Not too light, but it's getting a little lighter. So he's going to be able to put up some points against some of these teams that aren't very good. But I think he has a chance. I think I'm not going to just summarily dismiss Paul George because you guys know how I feel about PG-13. But I'm going to go with Andrew Wiggins for sure. Yeah.
So Tunde, you opted to go with Devin Booker instead of Ja Morant. Would you have Ja as one of your wild card then, or do you think he shouldn't be on the team at all?
Well, I'll say right now that one of my wild cards is gonna be Domantas Sabonis. I think I already kind of talked about that. I do have Ja as my other wild card.
Ja, okay.
Yeah, I do have Ja as my other wild card. I think it's tough. This is kind of a there's always willing there's always kind of it's always kind of tough because there's only going to be 12, right? And there's always more than 12 players who have a real case for it. So somebody's going to be unhappy.
Not really.
Anyway, I mean,
I'm just saying it really isn't 12 people to make a case, really, but it's okay.
If there wasn't 12 people to make a case, you wouldn't be able to fill out the team.
So. Bare minimum. It's bare minimum of 12. There's not 15, 16 cases you could be made.
Oh, yes, there is. You could easily make a case for De'Aaron Fox to be in the All-Star game. You're trying to make a case for Andrew Wiggins to be in the All-Star game, and you are the only person who thinks that. So
yeah, I think Christian Wood deserves to be more than Andrew Wiggins.
All-Star game, Andrew Wiggins.
Anyway,
forever.
It's all good.
That.
It's all good. All-Star game starter Andrew Wiggins for Denver.
Mm-hmm. Andrew Wiggins is going to retire as a one-time All-Star too.
Probably.
Being the NBA champion.
The way that story will be in history books. You could really
NBA champion. Don't forget that. NBA champion.
You could really put that like that could be that'll be like its own standalone like cult documentary in 20 years. How BTS led to Andrew Wiggins becoming an All-Star game.
And NBA champion.
Sure, he was phenomenal in the playoffs.
And NBA champion.
I'm not taking any of that away from him. We're not derailing the conversation today. Those will be my last two. Those will be my wild card guys. It'll be Ja and Domantas Sabonis. Ja's been awesome. For me again, it's we were splitting hairs in the backcourt. One of the reasons Ja is down as far as he is for me is just because of the games played. But it's tough it's tough trying to pick between him, Damian Lillard, De'Aaron Fox. Those guys all really have cases to make it, but everybody can't go. So,
Chas?
Yeah, I think I mentioned just about everybody that I would have on the team. I would also have Devin Booker on there. Whether it be, one of the backcourt spots or one of the wild card, I don't think it really matters. I think him and Ja Morant will end up being there. I would have them too. And then, I agree with Tunde. I would have Sabonis in there as well. I mean, this Kings team has been really, really surprising this season. They've been one of the most fun teams to watch, in my opinion. And him, Sabonis, and De'Aaron Fox have been phenomenal. I think one of the two will probably get an All-Star nod. Not sure who it is, but with the backcourt being so loaded, I feel like it's probably more likely that Sabonis finds his way in. So I'll include him as well.
I definitely think De'Aaron Fox should be in there.
Oh, okay, nice.
So it's funny how we're talking about the Kings.
Yeah, right. That's
You know,
yeah.
just a year ago, they couldn't get any airtime. But I definitely think the Kings are making headway. They had 2 All-Stars, I believe. And then that last spot, I don't know. It's hard for me to put Dame there. I can't lie. Like, it's hard for me to put him there.
Yeah.
But if we're going based on name alone, I put him there. If we're going based off just his name, this is Damian Lillard, so he got to be an All-Star. But I don't necessarily know who I would choose over him. And I think that's the bigger problem, is that although I don't think he necessarily deserves it, I don't know who you will put over him. So for that reason, I'm going to give him the nod, even though I'm hesitant to do so.